evening, world. Welcome to Behind the Lava Lava. I'm your host tonight, Milford Tiafala, and with me is the usual crew. We got Johnny, we got the Prez, Michael Tan, we got the Golf King, Ati, and then we got the main birthday boy, Spence. All right, and we're very honored and privileged tonight to have who I think is an up-and-coming MC in the future as far as repping not just hip-hop, but, Samoans and hip-hop. And he goes by the name of THT Cyrus. But before I introduce him, let me tell a little story about how I stumbled onto his music. So I was just on Facebook scrolling, and then one of the homies from the IE, Menelik, shout out, he posted this Spotify link to, I seen this song called Finally Free by THT Cyrus, and I just saw a Samoan flag, and I was like, all right, I guess I'll just click on this for kicks and giggles. And then, boom, starts playing, and then the piano hits, that chord hits, I was like, oh, all right. And then that Finally Free part hits, I'm like, oh, okay. And then For the Fathers, I'm like, oh, and then the cadence is going, and it's just hitting, and just every part of the lyrics is taking me through a journey. And it, man, like, it hits close to home, but at the same time, not me individually, personally. I got in trouble with the law before, but not to a far extent. But it just made me think about my auntie, who I lived with in a while for a little bit in the IE. And I got her cousin who's locked up, and just part of Cyrus's lyrics, man, it helped paint a picture of him coming home, whenever his time's going to be up. And then just imagining how happy my aunt and cousins would be, as soon as he's released. I mean, that song within itself it's not just something relatable to those who have family or loved ones locked up. It's, like I said, he masterfully crafted this thing and telling the story, and not only telling the story, but making it a hit, in my opinion, that anybody can vibe with. But just being able to sort of know the sort of experience he's talking about, that was just the journey, just to close my eyes and just to think about, and that's why I can listen to it over and over. I got it in rotation. But enough from me. THT Cyrus, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners out there?
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. Everybody on the panel means a lot. It's an honor just to be here to speak on my behalf and pretty much tell my story, answer any questions that you guys have. But yeah, my name is THT Cyrus. I'm from Santa Ana, California. I'm out here in Vegas right now, just pretty much doing my thing. But yeah, just a Samoan kid, first generation born in America. So the roots are still strong, tied back to the islands. But yeah, that's me.
So stumbling upon his music, I went and tried to find more content from the Uso, because I was like, man, I'm not saying he is him, but just the authenticity in which you hear in the lyrics and the delivery, it reminds me a lot. I would liken to Nipsey, rest in peace. It's that real. So trying to find content, went on his page, went on YouTube, started looking him up. And then I also noticed that there's a cause that he supports and he shouts out in his music. It's called the F.O.U movement. Would you go ahead and talk about that a little bit?
Yes, the F.O.U movement, it's an acronym. It stands for Fa'atasiga O Uso. So the Gathering of Brothers. So it's a bunch of the Usos who did time in the California prison. And once they got out, because for those who don't know, once you get locked up in California, it's very racially divided. So whether you go into prison and you're Samoan or just Islander in general, whether you're a Crip or a Blood or a SA or whatever you claim, when you get to prison, you choose. You really either run with your gang or you run with your peoples. So a lot of the Usos, when they go in, they choose their people. We may be short in numbers, but that love and that strength that our people have is still there. So all the Usos that came out of prison, or who did like 20 years, 30 years, 15, all these years, once they came home, that same love that we had in the systems, they wanted to have that out here. So for those who go in and after 10 years, they want to change their life around, but then they get out of prison and they go straight back to their neighborhood. And there's like a big confliction there. So the Usos that are part of the F.O.U movement, they're all from rival neighborhoods. Like at one point in time, they were shooting at each other, but now they stand together to pretty much bring that light to the darkness that they once spread in this world. You know, they do a lot of things for like the children who may be coming up in that same way that they came up. They do a lot of things as far as reentry program for those who go in and out. And then they do a lot of things for those who are struggling addicts. So they do everything they can to pretty much keep our people on the straight and narrow. I see now the generation now, they're kind of putting that behind them and just focused on the future. So these guys, they're doing what they can. So I'm a proud member. I didn't do serious time like them. All of my time was really as a juvenile. So I was in and out of the systems that way. But I was lucky enough to turn my life around early. And yeah, these Usos, they really stand for something. So if you're familiar with the Mau movement and what they did for the Samoans back in the 1920s, like this is what the Usos are doing now. And so, yeah, man, I'm standing with them. I push them as much as I can.
That's amazing. So is there a way that if people wanted to support the movement, best way to get in contact or just help donate financially, monetarily? Or?
That'll be on Instagram. On Instagram, just look up F.O.U movement or Fa'atasiga O Uso. They always post whatever they have going on. They do Zoom meetings every other Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And yeah, they have a lot of things going on. I believe they were just in San Diego. They did a plate sale there, and all the money that they gather, they're trying to buy like a building, like kind of like a YMCA. You know, when they're talking to these kids, telling them, oh, you don't have to do that. You don't have to go hang out with such and such. And then the kids go, well, where am I supposed to go? And now they don't have an answer. So they're like, oh, you know what? Let us purchase a building and you know, maintain it and have a haven for all the Islander kids, and not just Islanders, just all children to just come on through. And if they don't have somewhere to hang out and they're trying to stay away, like they're definitely trying to help with that. They sponsor a lot of events. If you guys are familiar with Tanel, the singer, her dad is in the F.O.U movement. That new up-and-coming rapper, Craig, his uncles are in the F.O.U movement. Like these Usos that are in the F.O.U movement, they're tied to everybody. J Boog's cousin is in the F.O.U movement. Like, yeah, man, these Usos, they're doing a lot, and I would definitely check them out on Instagram. Look them up and just message them. Like they have that open door policy. Like if you ever just need to message them, they'll do their best to get back to you as soon as possible.
Just to chime in real quick. So are you guys centralized or based out of California, and do you guys only focus on California with the CDC down there, or is it like a national thing or a worldwide movement?
So far it's just Southern California, because when we think about the troubles that has like plagued our people, especially in the States, it's Southern California. It's LA, Orange County, and San Diego. So what the Usos did was they focused on Southern California. All the biggest Samoan gangs, like they're all a part of this F.O.U movement. You know, maybe just the youngsters are probably not cool with it. They're still doing what they got to do and whatever. But as the older Usos, they recognize it. So they're just focusing on them right now, trying to, you know, make amends between everyone. And then it's, how do you say it? It's like, it's not just close to everyone else. I mean, I know the Tongans also have their movement as well, but it's not close to them. You know, those are our brothers. We look alike. We eat some bomb food, but what the Usos are doing is, how do you say it? Like, we can't help anybody else if we can't help ourselves. So yeah, that's what the Usos are doing. It's pretty much just Southern California. But after we can get everything wrapped up down in Southern California, then it's going to spread that way.
I just wanted to go back a little bit. You said that did you say you were first generation, come from the island?
First generation, born in America.
Oh, born in America. I guess what I'd have to ask, because when families move over from the island, It's like sometimes, especially that recently, it's a process of establishing roots. They're coming from an island where we have family ties going back generations. It comes to a new land where we're all kind of figuring out together. I'm not speaking from firsthand experience. I'm in the same boat. My mom came from Malaysia. I was born here in the States, SoCal too, but I was off in the desert in 29 Palms, so different setting. But I guess what I wanted to ask is, what kind of role would you say different communities played in your integration into being in the United States, being in Southern California? And I guess specifically what I'm gearing toward is hip hop and music. What kind of role did that play in integrating you into finding your home here in the States?
Oh man, being born here, I mean, I guess you could say it's all I know. I didn't grow up in the islands. I went back and forth for a while. So when I went back home and doing F.O.Us and doing like the Malmungas and stuff, and then coming to the States and be like, I am never going back. Like chores, why am I going back? But no, growing up in the States, my family, it was still to this day, tied to the whole Samoa. We were still tied in with like our matais and stuff. And, we were not far removed. Everybody still speaks Samoan and stuff. Mine is really broken, so I don't even try. I just get yelled at by my mom, When I speak Samoan, you answer back in Samoan, but she speaks Samoan, I answer back in English. Oh, she hates it. But, man, just growing up, I grew up in a rough neighborhood. Really, my whole family's from a specific gang, but we lived in the middle of a neighborhood that was kind of from another gang, and they were cool with us. And growing up, it wasn't unnatural to see people kind of run up and down the streets fighting and shootouts and stabbings. Like it was sad to say, but it was like regular to us. It was normal. And when the cops have the whole block taped off, and like at me in elementary school, just going under the tape and be like, oh, I live right here, just walking by a crime scene. That was like my first experiences like that I remember. And the whole music thing came in was, man, I was in middle school. And I don't know if you guys remember, but everybody had it. Like back in school, we used to have those black and white composition books, really thin paper. So as a English assignment, so my teacher can grade us on our English and, writing or whatever, she told us to write a diary. And to go back into like my life, I grew up without my parents. And, one day my mom dropped me off at a motel, gave me $20 and told me to look after my little brother. And I called my grandparents from there, and I was with them ever since. So every day was like an uphill battle, and I was writing that in these composition books. And my teacher told me like, oh, you should write poetry. I wasn't good at it, and I tried. And next thing you know, I started writing raps and I was 11 years old. And that was the beginning of music, for like rapping wise. I wasn't exposed heavily into rap like as a kid, like 11 years old. That's old enough to know what your favorite song is. But I grew up on like the Stylistics and Midnight Star, like some really old, like Daniel Ray Costello, like the real like reggae, old reggae and stuff. I knew who Gregory Isaacs was before I knew who like Biggie was, like I grew up heavily in reggae and all the R&B, like Babyface and all these groups. But that was my first exposure into music, and me deciding to be a rapper, that was just out of the blue. Like it was a way for me to cope with what my life, what I was going through. And yeah, 19 years later, I just turned 30. From 11 to now, like still doing it, still, keep pushing and stuff.
That's dope. I think that's what's interesting about what you said is that it is kind of on par from a lot of poly MCs that I'm familiar with, because I've noticed that as I listen to a lot of poly MCs, they're very distinct. It's hard to say like, oh yeah, this guy must be a poly rapper, because there's a lot of distinct styles. And I think part of that comes from the fact that I know a lot of there's some poly rappers I know that were straight up hip hop heads, and they grew up trying to emulate their favorite rappers. But then there's a lot of poly rappers that I've noticed that they're the first ones in as far as people they knew in their own circle. And it was not the music they were raised with. You know, a lot of them came from loving funk, loving island music, reggae, etc. And then they took inspiration from other genres of music to create and interpret that into what hip hop was for them. You know, that's something that I've always loved about poly rappers, is that they're very individualistic. I've always enjoyed that about them. Even going back to like some of the OGs of the format, Booyah Tribe, you know, rest in peace to Godfather, rest in peace Gangsta Rib. It's crazy to learn about their career and how they, you know, of course, they're raised West Coast, raised in the gang life, etc., but they weren't really emulating anybody locally. Like, they picked up and they went to Japan to start touring around there to start figuring out what their sound would be. And then they come back, and it's crazy to see how much stuff they pioneered at the same time. Like, you know, they were a live band, I believe, before the Roots were a live band, or at least before the Roots were like doing it big. You know, they were doing their dance routines like big time before that was a really catchy thing. They were doing gangster rap in 1989 before that was really taking off and being the big thing. And so it's crazy to see how much that they pioneered, but from their own experiences and what led them to that. But anyways, I just love hearing that, and especially just seeing what brings great artists to the point that they're at now and how they develop their styles.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you.
On that note, though, are there any specific rappers in your community, whether the Polynesian community or even just your local area, that specifically drove you or inspired you, or someone that schooled you to the game, or anyone who specifically inspired you to create the sound that you have?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I have a lot of influences. You know, everyone who's ever been in my life or came around, they always supported. They may not know too much about the game, but they knew what I was pushing, the agenda, the stories I would tell, and what I would represent. So definitely would always get that support. But I was a cousin. I used to be signed to a label called Manuscript. And my cousin was the lead engineer and producer in that. And ever since I was little, once he knew that I wanted to rap and make beats and do all that stuff, he was always in my corner. So for me, as 11 to all the way up until I was 23 when I signed that contract, and he was there with me and he signed as well. Definitely, he has to get the most props, because at the time I had no direction and I didn't know what I wanted to do with life. I didn't care much for sports. Nothing. Like, all I had were the streets and then lyrics, and it was one or the other, and I didn't want to dabble in both. So once I went full on with the rapping, definitely he's the one that schooled me. And then through that, over time, I met a lot of artists who would kind of push me in the right direction. I used to open up for Nipsey Hussle. I think in 1 year I opened up for him 17 weeks. So LA, Santa Ana, San Diego. So I got to know him. Yeah, man, like that was a real dude, man. That was a real dude. All of my old music, you can still find it on my SoundCloud. Like, you can hear how young I was, but the message was still there. And he definitely pushed me to, like, man, just stay who you are. Like, stay this. Like, you're going to grow as an artist and your lyrics are going to get better. But as far as content and where your mind state is, just keep it at that and you'll be good. So yeah, definitely him. A lot of influencers are influences behind closed doors who don't get their names shouted out in songs or whatever, but they're the main forces behind, like, the poly movement. Like, they all gave me their stamp of approval, and, you know, the pat on the back. Everybody from Brownsville, like the rappers from Brownsville, Baby Down, who's a part of the F.O.U movement, he gave me his full blessing and stuff. So everybody I come across, you know, they've definitely shown a lot of support and kind of just pushed me in the right direction. But yeah, that's what I got.
So let's dive a little bit into your podcast, because, you know, I listened to your session with Uso Ron on 30 to Life. Shout out to him and what he's doing. It's awesome. I mean, I'm grateful that I went on your page and was able to find another Samoan doing his thing and informing us out there. But heard you mention that you guys kind of, what you want to do with your podcast is take on mental health, those type of issues.
I think with us, it was mainly for, it's crazy. It was just to give everyone the viewpoint of Samoans. Everybody has a podcast of experiences and when they talk about other things, but there's never any Samoans who talk about it. So when we talk about mental health and stuff, like the depression, the suicide, the anxiety, the drug abuse and stuff, like that really exists in our culture, and as Samoan men, especially, like we don't like to admit stuff like that. When I was growing up and I didn't have my mom and I was going through these problems, living on the streets and fighting with my family, like the family would just be like, oh, you're fiopoko, like you're to this, you're to that. Like, but I'm trying to tell them like, no, I know I don't have a problem, but really I'm dealing with depression and suicide and all these things. And I'm trying to tell my family like, like I have these problems. And everyone says you should go to the people you love. But then when I go to the people I love, then they turn around, they call me stupid and they say, well, why are you thinking like that? That was my dad's thing. Like, him being very old school, like he was old when I showed up in the picture. Like he was old to begin with. So that was one of those things we brought up to the podcast. Well, like, what, why don't we talk about this stuff, especially as Samoans and Islanders and definitely we have people on who talk about those issues. Another thing was interviewing people from different islands. So, we interviewed people who are from Samoa, like they grew up there and they just got to America about like 10, 15 years ago. So it's still fresh in a way. From Tonga, from New Zealand, like all these places, like getting them on and comparing our lives. Like growing up Samoan in America isn't the same as growing up Samoan in New Zealand. So hearing from their point of view, like what did you guys go through? And you just hear that their experiences are completely different. But at the same time, it was like whenever we got back to home life, like if for some reason it was always the same. And so definitely introducing the world to the other islands, because when they think of Islanders, realistically, they only know of Hawaiians and Samoans. And then for our other island brothers and sisters, whether they're from Tonga or Fiji or all Tokelau, like all these other places, like people only identify them as Samoans or Hawaiians. So it was like definitely a way for the world to see them, as their own individuals, giving people their spotlight in their entire cultures and like having them educate us on that. But yeah, the podcast is called Vibe Tribe. It's the banner right behind me. Yeah, it was just me and my Usos. Just one day, we were just drinking, and we were talking for hours and hours. You don't know how we do it. It just nothing. Like the conversation's not going anywhere. It's just jokes and jokes and jokes and more drinking and all these things. And we just decided one day, like, oh, why don't we turn on a camera? We're pretty funny, like, And this is us as. I'm not THT Cyrus, like in this element. I'm Cyrus Titangata. Like we're our own people. And finally we just said, let's turn on the camera. And then one day it just clicked. Like people just kept stopping by. And we're like, you know what? I think we should take this serious because it's already at 4 hours and we're still just cracking jokes and this conversation is not going anywhere. And I think it's time to end the podcast. And that's how it was. And man, it's bloomed into something else. It's me, THT Cyrus, my little brother Pacific Chief, my other brother Big Husky, and then our sisters Doom Bunny and Ina Baby. My two sisters, they're from Guam. So definitely having that female element, because as guys, we're just gonna talk about dumb stuff. It's gonna be serious and then it's gonna be dumb again. But just having the females on there, giving their experiences, telling their truths, and just having that female dynamic, because we just kind of go out on the whim. We don't plan anything. Where we have plans on what the podcast is, but it'll be the night like 5 minutes before, and be like, oh, I think I just thought of some questions. Yeah, so that's us. That's us. Like, oh, I think I have questions, and then we just let it roll. Usually, I'm the host of it. It's all equal on the podcast, but they tend to push it on me because I can just talk and just on a whim just start asking questions and have a good podcast. But yeah, that's pretty much the vibe tribe.
It's pretty interesting because it sounds awfully familiar to these dudes. It's kind of like how it started for most of us. How our little podcast started was, it was a group chat of gamers. Michael Tan. It was a whole bunch of working adults talking crap back and forth. And I think the uniformity of it was that we were all prior military at least one point, and we were all Samoan. And we just decided, Michael Town's like, we should make a podcast. Like, sure, why not? Let's try it. That's exactly how it started. It sounds very similar. The only thing we don't have is we're not cool enough to have girls on our podcast.
Oh.
So let's try to get Spence in a wig or something, just so we can get the female side. But yeah, before I went on a tangent, I was wondering, so did you have like a specific target audience you were going for when you were making, or you decided to make music? Or was it just kind of like you were just coming out and just went with the flow and put out the product and see who bites?
Ooh, I would say I did it. Me being a poly rapper or a Samoan rapper or anything, it never crossed my mind that obviously that's what I am. Like, that's not how I wanted to put myself out there. Like, I wanted to see everybody on an equal playing field and take race and color out of the equation. Like, I want to see where I stand toe to toe against anybody. Whether it's another Samoan, no matter, background they came from, I wanted to see where I stood. So for a while, I was just going around trying to be the best rapper I could, until one day my cousin told me, well, why don't you just kind of tap into the Islander side of things? And I just said, oh, I guess. And like, at the time, the music I was making it just sounded like it was from the East Coast, and I just had nothing but bars and like the boom bap beats and all that. Like, that's how it started. And then I would listen to the other poly artists, and they all sounded like they were trying to emulate a G-funk background, and they were trying to be more melodic, or they were just trying to be straight up gangster rap. And my approach was completely different. And definitely I had to go back to the drawing board because like you're saying, like, nobody was biting at that point. And everybody was just like, oh, well, he's just a guy who can rap, but he's not a rapper. And it was like, yeah, he says he makes hip hop, but is he really an MC? And like, so definitely I had to go back to the drawing board. Definitely I had to get better. And then I got better. And then over time, the confidence just came in. Like, it doesn't matter who's there. Like, if I get a feature, whether it's a Samoan cat or anything else, like, when I get on this song, I'm going to be the one verse you remember. And it's not like a sense of me being cocky. It was just like, I've worked hard to be where I'm at. I worked very hard to be very good at what I do. And I want to make sure I'm going to be very good. So yeah, definitely being Samoan now, I appreciate it because I'm very tapped into the culture. I'm trying to get my Samoan back. Like, I'm really, really, really tied in. This is the first time I'm ever going to announce it. I actually become a matai in December. So like, I'm that, like, I'm back. I did the whole 180 where I just came back to just being Samoan all over again and just falling in love with our culture and what it means, and educating myself on like people like Salamasinga. And when I brought up the Mau movement, like who these people were and what they meant to us, and that their names don't get forgotten. So now, as you know, when people say, oh, you're a Samoan rapper, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I am. Don't forget it. Like, so when I'm on stage and be like, oh, he's he's Samoan. I'm like, yeah, he sure is. And just that reaction people get where, dang, I didn't know it was like that. Like, so definitely how it started wasn't me being Samoan, but now I'm all in.
I was just going to go off of the same question. Now, from when you started to where you are now, do you think that your influences have changed? Have you gained any new influences? Have different genres influenced your music that you're making now? Is there a major difference from when you started to where you're at now? Because I know you said you started early, way early when you started making music, and your influences back then, the Motown funk, a lot of the golden oldies.
Yeah.
And then you named some of them as your major influences. Have you gained any new ones so far, like today? Like I know at one point in time when Spence was talking about Booyah Tribe, they were a good example. Because even back then, I remember there was a documentary I seen where they were talking about a bunch of Samoans that were gang members doing heavy metal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of their influences as well. And they were doing like screamo heavy metal and rapping to it. So it was like, it's an odd mix, but it helped build the way they were, or the way they ended up being. And so, like, I know our mindset back then changes over time. And as you get older, you tend to appreciate things that you didn't before, like you said, with Samoan music. So essentially my question is have you gained any new influences now that is kind of slowly molding or evolving your style with the times, or are you just going to maintain that same style you started with back then?
Man, that's a good question. I guess it, like how you said, like how I didn't appreciate it back then. I think with me creating music, it became less and less about the music, if that makes any sense. It was life in general, because there's people who support me, who supported me from the beginning. They were in my first music video. There were all of these things, and they're no longer here with us. One of my biggest influences in life was my older brother, my uncle. His name's Lico. He passed away in January, and when I made music all last year, it was for him. Like, if you notice, I don't curse in my music. If you guys ever get to listen to it, I do that on purpose because there's a million words out there to describe how I feel and to put sentences together. I can do that without cussing. There may be one song where I do it, but it would be 1 out of 20 songs that has a curse word, and it's one time. So he was the biggest influence. My uncle was, I categorize my own music as feel-good music you play on at a Sunday barbecue, because I don't cuss and you can play it back to back. And I specifically make music just for that. So whether there's a lane for that, I'll definitely be glad. But really, it's about family now. It's all about life. Me being alive at this age, it wasn't supposed to happen coming from where I come from. And now that I look back, it's like, I have to tell that story. I have to say how I feel. Like, finally free. That's from the experiences of me going to see my father in jail. When I say, whenever he called and reminded every minute that this call's being recorded, like every minute it says, this call is being recorded and blah, blah, blah. And it cuts off whatever they're saying on the other end. Like these were the details I held on to, talking to him through a glass. And then there's like a little phone that's hooked up to one side and he's on the other. Most of my memories of my father are him in a blue jumpsuit or him in an all orange jumpsuit. I can't tell you what he looks like in civilian clothes. And life was the biggest, the change. It stopped being about, like I said, Midnight Star and Gregory Isaacs and all these people. It's like, now I hold my uncle up there, my ancestors. How I said I'm going to be a matai. Like, I can tell you where my family's from, what my last name means, and just down, that family lineage where the Makais, they have to know that whole thing. And I know all of it. So there's names I've never seen ever, and I want to make sure I keep them alive. And yeah, man, life in general. That's what my biggest influences are right now.
I guess my turn. Hey, first of all, props to you, Uso, for joining us tonight. Just hearing your story. put it out there. That's real authentic, man. I really appreciate that. You mentioned matai, man. I know one of our topics was going to be about matai, man. And I want to talk a little bit about the F.O.U mentality. Now, F.O.U, fresh off the boat. I was born in 90. 95, I left American Samoa. Went straight up to in Cali. Stayed there for about 5 years. And the reason why I had left was because my grandfather, back in American Samoa, just back in the day, if anybody was taken to the hospital, they guaranteed that person was going to die in like a week's time.
Yeah.
So my parents decided, and my dad, because this is my dad's dad, my grandfather, they decided, their siblings, that he was going to be brought up to the States for better health care. So they all agreed that one of their siblings was going to represent them in taking care of my grandpa. My father, unfortunately, couldn't make it, so I, left early, 5 years old, on his behalf to help out, with the siblings. So from 95 to 2000, I was living in Cali, in the Daly City. Right, but I don't know if you know where Daly City is, but that's where the college is, right up in the Bay Area.
Yep.
So that F.O.U mentality, getting there, at a young age, the only thing that really kept me alive back then was having that care for my grandfather. He was the one that, because I don't want to put my family out there, but living with my auntie and everybody, in Cali, it was one of those depressive times when my grandfather passed away in '99. My parents came up, and the whole plan was I was going to go back to American Samoa with them. But they ended up leaving me in Cali, and I felt that they abandoned me. And then at that point, I switched my life, and it was just, it was a gang life. I was at the door. But luckily, my dad, he had a dream where he said that he saw me. There was a big hole in my back, and he came back in 2000 and he brought me down to Fortunately, he brought me back down to American Samoa. But living in Cali during those times, man, that F.O.U mentality coming out, a lot of people don't really know this, but gang life or gang in general was actually brought upon as a necessity, because of oppression. And when you talk about oppression, you're talking about the small minority groups that we have, Samoan minority group. We are a minority group. And when we first hit, the States, a bunch of us got together and we formed, these groups that ended up going to become gangs. And that's how mobs started in the East Coast when the Italians came down. They started, their groups to try to fight the oppression against the police brutality and all that stuff. So, a lot of the gangs that on Max Street, when I was living, there was tons of gangs around. So I was right there in it. Our house was at the corner. Right across from us, there was a house there every day, and then now somebody was getting shot down the street, and it was just at times where when I initially thought a gun sound, I was scared at first, but then it became a norm. So, i.e., I became a product of that environment. I understood what it was. So, and I'm not speaking on everybody because like I said, everybody is a product of their environment, and I guess going with this in a way, I understand where you're talking about trying to go back and help out the community, especially the timeline. We come in, we do our life, and then as we grow up, we kind of understand that this is the life that, we as Samoans are not meant to live. We're meant to respect, those are the founding principles of Samoanhood, the culture, understanding that family is important, extended families and all that stuff. And I really appreciate the fact that now you're going back to it. You kind of realizing, hey, this is where life is supposed to be. I know the music is there, but at the same time, I don't know I know you mentioned poetry, but this is where I lead to my question is, have you ever, I know I kind of saw a documentary about Booyah Tribe because I was during that time as well, but they initially kind of started in the church. Because anywhere, like I don't know on the backside of it, because that's where they kind of initially started off. So my question is to you: was church a part of that too? Music trying to pull you that way, as far as poetry goes, or is there total opposite of that? Because I know, when we come in, when I came down there, the church was kind of the first things that I kind of went into, and music was heavily involved, especially in our communities, Samoan community. So, can you touch on that besides everything else?
I would say church was like a big reason why I started. So when I said I started out with poetry and I wasn't very good, I was writing lyrics, and I was in the children's choir. I'm singing and doing all this. And, one day your voice starts cracking, as an 11-year-old. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to start rapping. But definitely church. If I didn't write lyrics to sing because I was in the church choir, I would have never bothered with rap. So definitely church gave it that push. Yeah, and then now later in life, I think I kind of took my own direction. I believe I call it luck. Love, unity, compassion, and kindness. That's what I believe in. And I chose to keep it that way. Like, I'm going to make sure that's how I treat people, shake the CEO's hand and the janitor's hand in the same strength. So definitely just kind of just being equal with everyone. But yeah, I would say at the very beginning, like church was heavily like the biggest influence probably.
On that same note, I had to dig up a little bit of research. I know you did an interview for Ghetto Flair TV, and I know one of their questions was, what was your top 5, influenced rappers? I know you mentioned Inspector Deck, Biggie, Big L, Rakim, and Big Boy from Outkast. Is your top 5 still intact, or has it changed over time?
Influence-wise, it's changed, definitely. My favorite rapper of all time is Scarface. Scarface from the Ghetto Boys. To me, he still is the best storyteller of all time. Where when he says a lyric and about somebody running down the street and whatever, maybe there's the acts of violence are being committed. You can feel the bullets whizzing by just listening to him. It'd be top 5 is Scarface, Ice Cube, because he's another storyteller. Andre 3000, because he's a storyteller. DJ Quick, because he's the epitome of what a East Coast or West Coast dude sounds like on a regular basis when they're walking down the street. And number 5, ooh, that's rough. I think number 5, damn, that's rough. I feel so disrespectful leaving somebody out. Yeah, 5 is it'll probably be Nipsey. Favorite rappers of all time, influence, like who I guess you could say tend to model my work after, because I like to think I have a down south lyricism, East Coast delivery, but with a West Coast vibe. Like that's kind of where my music kind of landed.
That's dope. I like a lot of your picks there too, because especially like with Scarface, I feel like he's a very underrated MC for sure, specifically in the storytelling department. And that even extended to all of the Ghetto Boys. I mean, to this day, if I listen to Mind Playing Tricks on Me, rest in peace, Bushwick Bill, but his verse still gives me chills. I get goosebumps listening to his verse when you realize the twist in his story. But even with, I know that you've kind of modified your top 5 and shouting out Andre, but I like how even originally you gave a shout out to Big Boy, because he a lot of people mention Andre, and rightfully so, top tier. But I'm like, man, but Big Boy holds his own with him while being the other half of that group. And I'm like, it's awesome that you gave him those props too.
Yeah, to me, Big Boy is the king of the South. As a businessman, Big Boy, he definitely holds it down. Like he owns a lot that everybody's kind of tapped into. But yeah, everybody sleeps on Big Boy.
Yeah, I can tell that you, Cyrus, have a passion for music, and it kind of brought some memories to mind. For me, it's more of a trauma. I used to love music growing up. I went to a private Christian elementary school. That's where I was introduced to music. I was singing in elementary choir up till high school. I was singing in a choir, and I was also singing in the church praise team. And somewhere along the line, probably when I left the Marine Corps, I stopped singing because that passion for music suddenly waned. So my question to you, has your passion for music decreased or increased throughout the years? And what have you done well, if it has decreased at a certain time, what have you done to bring back that passion? Because I know that mental health and the fear of failure, those are two things that can stop you from continuing to pursue your music.
I think my relationship with music has kind of transcended and became more on a spiritual and a deeper level. Music is a part of me, like how I have two hands, I have two legs, how I have a heart. Just like if I ever fell down, I could still stand up because I still have my legs to stand on. If I fell on my stomach, I still have my two arms to push myself back up. And then if my mind ever fell on hard times, music would always have me. So yeah, music is a part of me. Whether I stop making music today and I never put something out for the rest of my life, like it wouldn't deteriorate. It would still be what it is. But yeah, no, like my music, it's gotten, I would say it's increased because I relied on it so much over my life. And now I can't live without it.
Okay, so I got, since I know you're from Santa Ana, so, born and raised California, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, or what's your opinion on the direction or of how California is turning out to be?
As far as mindset goes regarding gang violence and stuff, what I remember, what life was growing up, it's gotten better like tenfold. These children have gotten smarter, so they know how to spot the BS and how to stay away from certain things. They'll probably make wrong decisions in other ways, but as far as anything that would kind of tear down the community that they live in, I think it's in good hands. Whether we agree with them or not, like there's no destructiveness behind them. Probably just a really runny mouth, but that's how I see it. And then me living outside of California now, it's hard to say. Things have gotten expensive over there. I don't know if you guys are still there.
The reason I was saying this is because, like, I know about myself. Like, when I was born and raised in American Samoa. We moved to the States when I was in my teen years, and came up from my grandfather's funeral and just stayed. And then we were, back and forth. And then when I finished high school up here. I graduated and joined the military, and then eventually my parents moved back to Samoa because it was like, from my younger years all the way to my teen years was all American Samoa. Didn't know much about the States. Never left the States. Never left Samoa. And then from teen years to my adult life was the States, primarily Utah. I moved to Utah, and then lived in Utah for a bit. Joined the military. And I left, and then toured the world with the Marine Corps, and then ended up in California. And wasn't a fan of California. It was more the political climate. I wasn't a fan of the political climate in California. But, did my time, and then met this girl. She's from California. I'm 29 Palms, but her family's originally from Southern California area. Specifically, her father was in the system for a number of years. So it was like the dichotomy, the relationship between that my wife had gone through. She was 3 when he went in, and he got out at 17. So it was like she was a kid, and then he comes out and she's married with kids. And it was a new world for me when I met her. And then when I was, I met some of her uncles, they were all from Compton, and speaking to them and asking about their experience in they would tell me stuff like exactly what Ati was saying. It was, they came from the islands back in the 70s, late 60s, and they get stuck in between a rock and a hard place. You got the Mexicans on one side, you got the blacks on the other side, and they're caught in the middle. And so they banded together and created their own group just for protection. And so it migrated into this thing, and they started emulating the lifestyle. And then we started getting people in the system. And so it was different for me to try to understand the mindset. It was interesting. Right. Talking about DJ Quick, and yes, it's true. Yeah. In Southern California, they talk like that.
Just like
and
DJ
I was
Quick.
Like, yep, just like that. And I was like, and then it was, in a sense, it was kind of like a culture shock because I really didn't understand anything about. Like, you see, when you're talking about gang life, you're thinking blood in, blood out, what you see on TV, movies, stuff like that. But when you go to the areas and then you see the culture, the subcultures involved with the different generations. You have your OGs and you have your mid-generation, your early, late 20s that have seen or done some stuff. And then you have the little kids, the young bucks, the up and coming. They're the ones that are the most crazy ones, trying to make a mark or prove a point. And then I went to school in Southern California, for my degree was in criminal justice, but I started learning everything about the California prison system. And so it was interesting how they were, you were talking about earlier, in the prison system, Pacific Islanders fall under the others 2% with the Asians and everyone else. Because you have black, white, Hispanic, and then other. And it was like a filler thing. You don't put a black guy and a white guy in a cell together, so throw someone in there, or an Asian, if the numbers are off. And that's how it was for the longest time. That was how they practiced their stuff. And so it was like, it was interesting to see that. And then you go check out the neighborhoods, because some of my family is from Carson. And then you go down Carson. Well, if you go down Carson now, and the old neighborhood that my father-in-law and them were from, in Park Village, it's no longer there.
Yeah.
It's a whole different complex. It's like some of the neighborhoods are like some parts of Artesia is nice now. Mm-hmm. Like the housing's nice, it's cleaner. They've started picking up because the property values. It's close to the ocean, it's close to the beach. And so housing is getting a lot better. Neighborhoods looking a lot better. And the difference is in 10 to 15 years. So where I'm leading to this is you yourself, you started in Santa Ana, you're currently in Vegas.
Yeah.
You started music a certain way and you're slowly evolving and finding your, as new influences come into that. And then eventually, you're going to be the old middle-aged man who likes to bowl on the weekends. Because that's how we all started. And now that's me. I golf on the weekends and bowl. But where do you see yourself now in 5 years, in 10 years? Where do you see your life, or where do you want your life or your direction, whether it's music, whether it's life in general, whether it's relationship status, familial status? Where do you see it in 5 or 10 years from now?
In 5 years, with my work ethic and how much I'm pretty much gonna work for it. If I'm gonna be honest, I think I'm going all the way, and there's no backup plan. But this is it. Like, I'm riding on it. There may be a backup plan in the works, but as of right now, I'm going all the way. I'm responsible for too many people. Like, I got to bring them with me, and yeah, just kind of make everything, set it. I live for the generation I'm never going to see. So I'm going all the way for it. I'm going to, as many sacrifices as I can. Like, I'll be the little stepping stone, that I'll be the footprint that my family can kind of emulate themselves after. So yeah, it was 5-10 years. I'm going all the way. I'm not going to stop. I can't. Like, I can't.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you succeed. I hope you reach those goals.
Thank you.
I really do.
And that's dope, because that's kind of that. When you said that, it's kind of like that Nipsey Hussle, Tupac state of mind kind of answer. That reminded me of that interview when Pac said, "I may not be the one to change the world, but I will inspire the brain, the mind of the one who will change the world." I was like, when you said it, I'm like, I'm doing it for the next generation, etc. That's the kind of vibe I got. That's dope. But on that note, keeping it on music for a little bit, I wanted to bring up where I became familiar with your music was your presentation as a battle rapper, which, from what I now understand, is kind of a rare occasion. But the reason I bring that up is because we're talking about the music that you create, the content that you kind of driven your message towards. Your music is obviously, like, what you're publishing is, you keep it cuss free. You're trying to drive a specific message, and you're out there outwardly representing yourself as a Samoan MC. Now, what's the difference, though, when it comes to preparing for something like a face-to-face battle? Because this is what's bringing me back to what you were saying earlier when you said, I was just trying to walk around for a while, just trying to be the best rapper out there, best rapper I can be. And I'm like, okay, I can see where that mentality kind of carries into the battle prep. But that being said, you still kept it on message too, with representing the culture as well. So would you like to speak on that? Because that was an awesome battle, because like I'm very into like King of the Dot, Grind Time, and like the new school battle rap scene, and seeing you in that, and I'm like, this guy is a legit battle rapper. You could have told me this guy trades bars with Disaster and all them guys, and I'd be like, yeah,
Right.
for sure. Would you speak on that, bro?
Yeah, man. Battle rap, I was so obsessed with it for the past 10 years. Like, cause it's a different thing. It's not rapping on a beat. It's not trying to tell a story. I mean, some battle rappers do, but it's about who can rhyme efficiently and effectively, and who can utilize their delivery and their flow, and then creating punchlines and taking their name and flipping it so many different ways, and how to dismantle somebody verbally. Like I said, for the past 10 years, I was so obsessed with it, to where I kind of try to do that with my regular music, but they always there's this stigma that battle rappers can't make music. And when I did it, and I was like, oh, this is what they mean. Like, I was making a love song, and I wanted to throw in a gun bar in there somewhere, but it's like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. So being approached, there's a league out here. It's called the Cookout, and the guy who runs it, his name is King Gas. He's my producer, my engineer, that guy he's a business guy. He owns the studio, and he told me about the first Cookout, and I said, no, like, I'm not a battle rapper. I just want to rap, make music. And he kept saying, no, Cyrus, you're a battle rapper. For you guys who don't know, I make anthems for streamers, guys who, on Twitch and on Facebook, and, they need music at the beginning of their stream. I make them custom songs so they can play. And for those anthems, it's nothing but punchlines. It's just bars. And my producer kept telling me, like, Cyrus, that's a battle bar. That's a battle bar. You can use that. Cookout 1 passes by, I don't take it. And I said, no, I don't want to do it. Cookout 2, he was like, Cyrus, are you going to do it? I said, no, but I'll come by and support. And I showed up, and while I was standing there, I listened to everybody who rapped, and I was like, oh, I can do better than that. I can do better. I can do that. I'm better than that guy. I'm better than that guy. I can do that. And the whole time the guys was rapping, King Gas is standing behind the DJ booth just staring at me. And he was waiting for that reaction. And I'm just like, oh, that's a cool bar. That's a cool bar. I'll kill you, though. Like, I can still rap better than that. And then I looked at King Gas. He looked at me, and I was like, all right, put me on the next one. And I was like, this is just for you. This is a one-off thing. And I was like, all right. I have random bars in my head. I'm not really gonna write. I'll write like 8 bars. Everything else I'm freestyling. And then I meet that guy. His name's Boney the Savage, whatever. So we face off, and when we do the face off, and it looks like we're gonna fight, that's all him. His energy is just, I have to give him props, because he brings that. That's how he is in real life. Like how he talks in that face off. No, that's how he really talks. He's just aggressive. And so what they don't show in the battle, we get on stage, he hops on stage, and he runs all the way across, like in my face. And me and him almost fight on the stage. And his mind is, oh, this is just battle rap. We're going to argue. And my mind state is, I'm not a battle rapper. Like, we might fight right now. And so it calms down. And then what you see on camera is like the last 20 seconds of me and him arguing. But like for the first 4 minutes and 40 seconds, like I'm pushing everybody out of the way. So definitely that mind state, the mind state of battle rap, it's completely different from, you can say something crazy and smooth and real lyrical on a beat, but to say it and perform it in front of people against a person that you're battling, whose sole purpose there is to just take away all your credibility. And yeah, where I was at, I freestyled more than half of that battle.
See, and that alone's impressive, because freestyling is one of those things where people keep trying to redefine what it is. The definition of freestyle is not exactly what it, depending on regions, depending on eras of hip hop. A lot of people don't respect the off the top of the dome concept. So the fact that you only have so many bars prepared and the rest you're just ready to go in there and be in the moment, that's a real MC kind of moment to me. I think that's even more impressive now, because all my favorite rappers are the ones that do legit freestyles. Did you feel so? How did that feel, like getting into that battle? And did it kind of feel like you were cutting loose a little bit? Because if you're resisting putting gun bars in a love song, and it's like, oh, now I'm in a setting I can let all my gun bars flow, or like, did it feel kind of liberating in a sense? Or
Oh man, I gave him the whooping that he deserved. If I'm going to be honest, all of those restrictions that I had, like once I was let off the leash, and I was like, oh yeah, like this is going to be ugly. So, like I said, I wrote I said it's a hairline fracture, was cracking bone, old school Samoan tats. I came to tap in bone, watch his body collapse. I'll catch you lacking bone. Think lupus, how I do this. I'll start attacking bone. I wrote that. And then after that, the ending of the second round, where I'm pulling up masked up while you're holding this glass up. Y'all think that this man's tough. I'm calling this man's bluff. You getting your man snuff, and I'm hoping he act up, because all you hear is the goat in the back like, I'm all gassed up. I wrote that. Everything else was, I had the punchline. I just didn't have the setup. So if I had the bar, so in the battle, if you go back to rewatch it, I keep looking down a lot and I'm walking in circles. I'm thinking, I'm like, all right, they like that bar. Oh, they're going to like this one. Bam. Oh, they didn't like that bar. I need to hurry up and get into this one. Like, and the start of the second round where I call out this guy named Righteous, it was a rebuttal. I freestyled that whole entire thing because that dude Bonet called out Righteous in the first round. And so I rebutted him at the beginning of the second round. And then when he kept talking about my girlfriend, and then I freestyled about my girlfriend, and then I stumbled because I'm literally thinking like, oh, what do I say? What do I say? What do I say? And then when I said the line, nobody goes crazy. And I had about like 8 more bars after that I was going to write. But when I realized how flat it fell, I was like, oh, I know what's going to kill him. Well, I'm pulling a masked up while you holding it. So when I did that, and pretty much it was just the mind state of jumping in and out of writtens. Like, I wrote this. All right, I need a freestyle about this. Or I wrote this. I got a freestyle about this. And like going off of the crowd. But I think after the first round, I was just back to back. Like, I got him running zigzags like Apocalypto. Like I was just saying things that like, oh, maybe you guys watched the movie. Maybe you didn't. And then I watch it, and like more than half of the crowd watched the movie Apocalypto. And I was like, oh, I thought I was the only one. I thought I was the only one that was going to pat myself on the back. But yeah, just when I said I'll zip up his whole hood like Bathing Ape, like it was just too many for him. It was just too many. And so I kind of just identified like, I just rap. So I just have punchlines. I don't have a performance. I don't have anything else. I don't have aggression. I just punchline. So I was like, that's what I'm going to beat you with. And I just kept punchlining after punchlining after punchlining. And yeah, eventually he kind of crumbled.
And that's awesome. And anybody listening who hasn't caught that battle, I encourage you to look it up on YouTube, because Cyrus, you represented yourself very well, because as far as like on a level of anybody who can appreciate good hip hop, because on a freestyle level, you represented, on a written level, like you represented very well on that. But even just the swaying of the crowd, and then just staying on message with what you're representing as yourself and as a Samoan MC, it was just like awesome representative right there. So props to you on that battle. Anybody listening should definitely treat themselves to go check that out.
Yeah, so that whole zipping up the whole hood like Bathing Ape, that one, man. Or even just the beginning, tapping bone, you know, the lupus line. I wonder how many people's heads that one went over. But even now, it's just like right off the jump, he already bodied this guy without barely trying.
For sure.
So going back to the matai situation, right? You know, you're going to become matai this December, right? I want to know how that conversation, because we were one of our topics we want to discuss is, you know, about who qualifies to become a matai. You know, I just want to hear on your end, how did that go about in your family? Because I know there's had big discussions going. I know there's, you know, other siblings, you know, on the next level, you know, your parents' siblings, you know, your dad or your mom's side, because the way it happens in our culture is the whole extended family gets together, they talk about it, and then they choose a date, you know, in the future to, you know. So how do you go about just are you going to have like a, you know, what a saufai is?
Yeah.
Just talk on it, man. You know, I know you know, there's a lot of Samoan Usos out there that, you know, doesn't really know the, you know, concept of, you know, mataihood and the process that it goes in it. So go ahead, Uso.
Yeah. So in order to become a makai, it's pretty much somebody who has like a great standing in the family or the village, or the village. So someone who, I guess you can say, that's like very charitable, that's always willing to help, somebody who can be seen as a leader, definitely somebody who puts the family and the village before themselves. The talks of me came up because, I'll take it back, in 2011, my grandfather had passed away. That's who I call dad. And he was the last makai to be alive in his generation. So it was a really big deal that when he passed away, and my family kind of crumbled, they buckled. And I was only 19 years old and I didn't buckle. So for my family looking at me as a kid, I'm still a kid, I'm only 19, and still carrying myself in a way that I knew my grandfather would approve. I'm no longer getting in trouble. Whenever they have like fa'atasiga, it's like I'm putting in. Like every time there's things, you know, that needs to be taken care of, I'm the one who steps up. And I have older siblings in their 50s, their 40s, their late 30s, and this 19-year-old kid is stepping up. Then all through my 20s, I kept doing the same thing. I'm sending money back to Samoa. My family's from Lokofanga. So, yeah, my family's from Lokofanga. Like, I come from like a really prestigious family. So my Sitangata side, they have a direct bloodline to Queen Salamasinga. And my mom's side, I'm a tonu mai pe'a. So she's directly related all the way to Nafanua. So like I definitely took that role of, if anybody's gonna stand, it's gonna be me. And I'm willing to hold the weight of the family. So fast forward to a couple months ago, I would say that. And my biological father, who's back in Samoa, he's still a makai out there in Lokofanga. And he told me, son, I just did a saufai and I have grandpa's grandpa's makai. And I was like, man, that's crazy. Like, and he was like, all right, so the family knows who you are. They know what you did. They know you're my son, but you're really grandpa's son because of who he is and the life you walk, you know, you chose to, the path you chose to be on, and they think you're ready. Well, they want to know if it's okay. If you get your makai, you can stay in America and you know, we'll do the saufai from over here. And I was like, nah, to me, it doesn't count. It doesn't count. I have to be there. Like, if my ancestors sat in a faleo and did all that, like, I'm gonna do the same. You know, whether my Samoan's really bad or not, like I'm gonna sit there and I'm gonna pretty much force my spirit to understand. And my dad was like, okay. He was like, we already have your makai. And I was like, oh, well, what is it? How do you already have it? He was like, I'm gonna give you grandpa's name. And I told him no. I turned it down a million times, and he was like, no, like, if anybody deserves to carry the old man's name, it's you. I don't even deserve it, and I have it. He's like, but I want to give it to you. So that's the plan. And me just thinking ahead of myself, I'm thinking of doing my be'a when I'm out there during the same time. So either after the saufai or before it. I'm thinking after, because that made make a lot of more sense. But yeah, man, that's what it is. Just be a stand-up Samoan, and you're, you know, and a man or woman in your family that everyone can look up to.
Yeah, that's good. You talked on it, because you brought up a good point. You know, it doesn't really matter what age. Doesn't really matter what age. But if you're that you're about family and you don't even have to understand the culture, it's just you have the qualities of, you know, family, respect, and understanding the concept of the Samoan and Fa'atasiga. That qualifies you, regardless if you were born in the States and, you know, there's traits in there and you realize it that, hey, I could be a big help to the family, especially the extended family, because that's what a lot of the qualities of matai was in the beginning. And I gotta say this, man, matais are actually poets. When you hear them speak that you know, that lingo, you know, it's a whole different. When you hear matai speak, you know, especially because there's two type of levels of matai. You got the elites, and then you got the kulafales. And the kulafales are the ones that speak on behalf of the elites. And, you know, those are the orators, so to speak. And those guys are the ones that they got to have a necessity, a level of literature. The thing about our, you know, matai, the very good, you know, speakers, is that their ability to memorize tons of vocabulary, you know, especially our language. And it just, you know, like, it goes back to just understanding that the love for family. You mentioned Lotofanga. My mom is from Lotofanga. Her family is from Lotofanga. I know Fiame is from Lotofanga, and she's now the Prime Minister of Western Samoa. She came down to recently in American Samoa, and my mom and her whole, you know, the village that are in American Samoa, they, you know, paid respect to her because Fiame is from Lotofanga. And Fiame is the ali of Lotofanga, so to speak. So, you know, I kind of understand on that side. They maybe you're on the other side, and, you know, your family's on the other side. My mom is on the other side of the, you know. But at the same time, you know, you spoke on the Mau movement. I want you to speak on that too, because not a lot of folks know about the Mau movement. They were key to Western Samoa's independence. They're a political group. They stood their ground, or else, you know, the oppression from the, you know, the British and, you know, the white man, so to speak. You know, talk a little bit about the Mau movement, just for the folks out there, how important that was in our culture or in our history.
Oh, yeah. Crazy you brought up Fiame. So how my dad's a Makai and Lokfanga, he actually helped put her in the office. So he was there at the inauguration when she went in, when she finally got let in the building because the other guy didn't want to leave. So yeah, he actually helped put her in the office.
It's interesting because Huila they're actually related. if you really go dig into it, Huila is actually that's Fiame's kind of technically an uncle or cousin. But they're from the same village. You know, Lokfanga, man. We got leaders in the village, man. So anyhow, I just want to put that in.
Right. yeah. Lokfanga has a lot of history. But yeah, the Mau movement back in late 1918, 1920 area. It was back when you know, the Germans had lost the war and New Zealand had taken over. And at this time, New Zealand was creating these laws kind of forbidding Samoans to be Samoans. And during this time, the Mau movement stood up. It was a collective of Makais from all over F.O.U and Sualevai. And they got together and they wanted to kind of maintain their identity. And what was being done was they were taking whoever was like the high up Makais and stuff, and they were shipping them off to different islands. And I don't know if those people ever came back, but that's what was happening. Like anybody who spoke out was being sent off to like Micronesia or something like that, or the Solomon Islands. They were just sending them out. During one of the rallies, it was a peaceful march. The Mau movement was just, you know, kind of doing a little parade to promote who they are. And New Zealand opened fire and ended up killing a member of the Mau movement. And it just so happened to be one of the main guys, if not the main guy from the Mau movement. So it was a collective of brothers who came together and really stood tall for Samoa. It became something historically for us as Samoans, especially for those who are from the independent state Samoa. But yeah, that's what the Mau movement is. I would recommend everybody to kind of tap into that, because if you don't ever run into someone who doesn't mention them, or you would probably never hear who the Mau movement was. But definitely, it was a lot of that. And then I guess not too long ago. I was what, 20, 30 years. New Zealand came forward and they said their apologies for what happened because it was uncalled for. But yeah, that's pretty much what the Mau movement was. It was a bunch of brothers who stood forward for our people, and yeah, that's what they are.
Yeah, I remember. I'm ashamed to say that I began studying about that era, but never really completed my studies. There's that book, Mao, The Forgotten History of Samoa's Independence. And I began studying from that, but then I had a cousin who was really interested in it. And I let him have my book, but I never finished reading it myself, but still on my definite to-do list, because it's one of those things where to honor our ancestors and the people who carved our present for us by doing what they did in the past.
Definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of history that I would love for our people to understand, like what the Spanish flu did to our people. About a quarter of our people died in Samoa. There's entire families that are gone. Like having our last names, you know, it means a lot to us. Like my last name is Sitangata. Anybody with that last name I'm related to, so I hold it dear. But there's families and last names that no longer exist because of the Spanish flu. And you know how when we bury our loved ones, it comes with a cost. Like a part of our heart is missing, so we all shed tears, and it hurts when we bury people. So if you can imagine back then, what the Spanish flu did was they just built a humongous hole. And because of the Spanish flu, if you died, your family was forced to just roll you up in like a iakonga or like a fala and just put you on the side of the road. And they were picking up your dead loved ones, throwing them in the back of a truck, driving them to this humongous hole and just throwing them in there. So you don't know where your family landed. Like they were just thrown in a hole and then covered up. And all of that history is just swept under the rug. But like a good quarter of our peoples back in Samoa, they were gone. Either there was babies that were left to be raised on their own and taken in by the rest of the village. Like these are like the history that I really want to put forward, like letting our people know and having them kind of do their own research. But yeah, there's a lot that our people went through, and to me, it's just what, like 100 years ago. Like that's too recent for me. Like that, like my grandfather just passed away and he was 94. He was alive for that. Like he was around that time. Like, so that's too close. That was too close and not too long ago for us to forget, like especially as our people.
All right. So Cyrus, any projects that we as fans should be on the lookout for? Anything coming up for you?
Man, I've been approached about being in some movies, still in the works. I have music coming out next month, September 21st. I named it Liko after my uncle who passed away in January. I might drop one more song, but hey man, I'm working. I'm doing the best that I can. But for you guys, thank you for serving our country, man. Like if no one ever gets to tell you that, it's you guys fight that fight that too many of us are scared to do. And you guys did it. So I'm glad you made it home. I know a lot of our brothers and sisters don't make it back, but for you guys to be here and still living in their name and living for your family, like, thank you guys so much. Like, I hope you guys get your appreciation as much as the next guy. So yeah, thank you guys.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
There we go.
Yes, sir.
All right. Before I get into closing, let me put this out there for our listeners. My rotation right now with Cyrus is, of course, Finally Free, Downhill, It's Real, and A Little While Longer. Those bangers I'm constantly playing right now. And like he said, he's a storyteller, like some of his influences, and it just paints a picture. It puts you in the vibe. It's the vibe tribe over here.
Yeah.
So, hey, I know I mainly listen to you on Apple Music, but you're on all platforms?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All platforms, Apple, Spotify, TikTok, YouTube, at THT Cyrus. Hey, I don't just talk about anybody. Like, I can't tell you how excited it was for me to have you on, because I truly believe that, like you said, you will go all the way, that you are the future, man. Like, it's just something about the way you deliver You feel it. You automatically connect with your listeners. So thank you for joining us. Be on the lookout at THT Cyrus Vibe Tribe. He's got a serious growing up Islander on YouTube. Check his crew out, man. They're very similar to us and addressing issues that most in our community won't talk about. Before we close it out, finally, anything you want to shout out there, Cyrus?
Oh man, again, just special thank you to you guys. Shout out my team at Vibe Tribe Podcast. Shout out my team at THT. And then for everybody who's been supporting me from day one and up till now, I love you guys. Thank you so much. And I promise I won't stop.
Yes, sir. All right, everybody, thank you for joining us tonight. Go ahead and like, subscribe, follow. If you have any suggestions to help us out or any topics you want us to discuss, go ahead and comment below. All right, everybody, Cyrus, Johnny, Spence, Ati, Dan, hey, peace out, everybody.